Hello and welcome to the Pig and Whistle Tales from Azeroth. As always, here at the Pig and Whistle Inn in Stormwind, I go for a variety of subjects with regards to World of Warcraft. So grab a bottle or a pint, sit back and enjoy this midweek episode, and we're going to be going over the final dungeon of World of Warcraft Classic, and it's one that a lot of people are very fond of, both in today's game and back when it was first endgame content essentially, and that is Stratholme. Stratholme being kind of a two-part dungeon. You have, you kind of have an entire instance, but the player base divided it into two parts. You have living side and you have undead side. Living side are the Scarlet Monastery side, where there are humanoid NPCs, and undead side, I'm guessing you can figure out what's on that side of the instance. But this, as a whole, has 16 bosses with 19 potential, with 3 rares. The instance as a whole is all connected, and it is all on the same level, unlike Lower Blackrock Spire and stuff. It is a giant instance. If you go for a 5-man, you get a lot of XP and very good gear. Speaking of gear, the gear in there is very, very good, especially from undead side, mainly due to the fact that it does hold a lot of pre-best in slot raid items, essentially. So you have a lot of good healing robes, necklaces, stuff like that. You have a lot of good pieces that can drop in there, as well as your 0.5 tier set can drop from many different mobs in that instance. The layout of the dungeon is kind of simple. Kind of think of it as 2 big circles, and where the circles meet is where they are connected via a giant gateway, essentially. So you can kind of think of it in that instance. So it's not too hard to figure out. Once you've figured it out, it's very, very simple. But you do have to backtrack if you wish to kill all of the bosses. So you generally do living side first, as it was a little bit lower level, probably 1 or 2 levels lower. And you would head into Balnazar's room at the end of the Scarlet Monastery bit, and then you'd have to backtrack and go all the way back out towards the opposite side from where you are to get to the undead side, which is a bit annoying, but it is something that you just have to do. But I would say once you've done it one time, it's very simple. You wouldn't get lost at all. Like I said, it's just 2 big circles. And if you can picture that in your head, you can pretty much navigate your way through the instance. The only thing that it does have is prerequisites to get to other bosses. So when you get to, what do I mean by this, is when you go to undead side, you need to be able to kill 3 bosses, and to kill the mobs that are in the room behind these bosses. This will activate or open up the gateway to the final boss, essentially. So if you've never done that, you'd think, oh, why isn't this gate opening? This is towards the final boss. It will be that reason that you didn't kill all of the acolytes, I believe they're called, behind the bosses in undead side. I knew this, or I was playing WoW for so many years, and I did Stratholme during my early WoW experience when I wasn't really paying attention, didn't know what was happening, and I came back several years later to farm the Strathmount, and I was like, oh, I've killed every mob in the instance, why is this gate not opening? And it's because I left one of these ziggurats, I believe it's called, functional. And essentially, I didn't kill the acolytes that were behind the 3 bosses. So I was running around like a headless chicken for several to teens of minutes, basically trying to figure out what the hell's happening here. You get used to it once you've done this a couple times. But yeah, the layout is very simple, and you can figure out your way after doing it once or twice. The loot is very, very good. It is your pre-best in slot, most of it. Plus, there's a chance for a mount from the last boss, which is very lucrative, a very low drop chance, and you would just have bragging rights on your server if you manage to get it in Classic. And essentially, yeah, was there a change when Cataclysm hit? And there was, but at the same time, there wasn't. The only thing that they did was literally split the dungeon into two halves, living side and undead side. They didn't change anything in terms of the layout at all. They even kept the ziggurats in retail right now, so you do have to kill the acolytes behind the bosses still in order to get to that final boss. So it's good to see that they literally just split it in two, because the dungeons are very, very long. In their own right, let alone having to do the entire thing in order to get the extra bonus XP that you wanted for going in there. Now, my rating. Now, I have such high regards for Stratholme. I think it is one of the best dungeons in the game ever. Just purely on the basis that it's two completely different halves. You're dealing with melee that do have mechanics. You're dealing with mages that summon frost elementals. You're dealing with undead that have diseases. You're trying to get to the final boss before the timer ends, and you have a prisoner executed. You have the Atiesh event that goes on in the dungeon, where you can get the Atiesh staff. You have so many things in this dungeon, and just lore-wise as well, Stratholme. It's so lore-heavy. Like, this dungeon is just perfect, in my opinion. But it's not as perfect as you might think it is. A little bit too long as a whole dungeon, and that's kind of the sad thing, because it did get split up in that Cataclysm, so it is 2 dungeons now, technically. So I can only give it a 9 out of 10. I don't think that there will ever be a dungeon that is a 10 out of 10, purely on the basis that it is very opinion-based. And I'm trying to think of a 10 out of 10, but I think Stratholme will be the closest that I ever get to it. I'll need to have a look, like, going forward. But essentially, yeah, Stratholme is one of the best dungeons in the game, in my opinion, and it's something that you should really experience, especially on Classic. If you're ever level 55 to 60 in World of Warcraft Classic, leveling through that right now, I'd very much recommend trying to get a Stratholme group, as it is very fun to do at that level. And essentially, you're missing out if you're not doing it. Especially just for the chance of a mount from the last boss is always, good fun to hype yourself up over it. But that is it for this episode. Thank you all very much for listening. When this goes live, I will be going live on Twitch, most likely. I go live on Twitch today at 5 GMT. I'm doing the AWC qualifiers. Be sure to check it out. Check out the Twitch and support us over there. But thank you all very much for listening once again. And go with Valor, friend. Goodbye all.